Okay, so recording now, meeting already in progress. We've only reviewed the action items and reports, and we're just talking now about our first topic, which is infrastructure and process updates, starting with badging. Ben, your update, please.
So after a few weeks of iteration, on Wednesday, we opened up the new badging system to the community. We posted it publicly. I'll add the link into the chat of the new page. We had gone through a lot of tests with the SBC team and some other folks beforehand. It seems like it's been well received. And really, I think it does make the badging system much more relevant. So if for anybody that hasn't checked it out, the first thing you'll notice is if you hover over somebody's profile image, their little icon, you'll see a pop-up that has all their badges. So you can get a sense of the skill sets that somebody has, the experience that they have. And now you can request a badge right through the hub. And the database is something that we manage separately from Badger, which allows us to have a lot more integration going forward. So I think it's really a great place to be. And it's going to allow for a lot more growth. And again, just as a reminder, our whole chapter system is based on badges. That's something that we married together a long time ago. So the next steps for us are going to be reviewing the chapter process and having that be sort of a separate page and process. And maybe one last thank you to Bob for modeling this for such a long time. The system that we came up with in a large part is based on the process that he's been piloting and modeling for years. So that's what we got.
And I put down just a couple of notes about other things that we haven't turned on yet, but maybe you want to touch on those. You mentioned the chapter management, so that'll be a module in this same administrative space that ties into this badging system. And you're also building a spotlight management tool in there to help us manage these spotlights that you've been modeling, right?
Yep. And, again, I don't want to go too far into it before more iterations with John and Masby, because there's so many things that we've sort of stirred into this big pot of soup. But what we've been doing up to now to collect data from chapters has included sort of an audit or emailing, which has some success, but it's limited, and also doing these individual interviews. I just posted one with Pakistan's Grit 3D this week. What we're looking at for the future is a toolkit, a dashboard that chapters would be able to update themselves, and something that maybe would have some sections that would be automatically populated. So things like their activity could be collected automatically in terms of the hub, but they could also be, instead of relying on somebody else to collect this every once in a while through an audit or through an interview, we could have chapters be able to sort of customize and edit their sort of public-facing story, which I think would be wonderful. John, is there anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay, so and then tied in with all this, of course, we're having ongoing discussions about what we're now calling community systems, sort of collectively, and I guess this all falls under this, but in this case, I'm referring to sort of our matching and reporting system. So I guess what you could consider one of our core systems potentially is the system that we use for connecting our volunteers with the people needing devices and kind of letting the data bubble up from that process and seeing what our community is up to and all that. And so we've been having an ongoing series of really helpful meetings with some key chapter leaders. There's some great progress being made, but we want to open this up further. Ben's going to be reaching out to additional folks in the community, other chapter leaders, and we want to get this into a sort of a monthly meeting around community systems. As a chapter, what are you doing to manage your data? How are you handling intake for new people that are looking for devices? How do you validate your volunteers? How do you, all of these different aspects of how chapters are doing what they do, and comparing one with another and trying to find some best practices and maybe tools or pieces that could benefit others, and trying to bring those together a little bit more and make them available to those who could benefit from them. So anybody who's interested, let us know, let Ben know, I guess, reach out to us on the hub, and we'll get you involved in those meetings. We're planning to start in June as we have some things in progress already.
Right, and maybe just to add to that, some chapters like Enable Brazil have put a lot of energy and have a pretty advanced system that potentially could be a model for other chapters. But it does seem like the way that things are going, we talked to folks in Colombia yesterday, they're working on their own app. People are sort of reinventing the wheel a bit in terms of trying to figure out how to manage their volunteers and the sort of process of recipient volunteers. Follow-up has been pretty universally stated as a challenge. So we're looking at, how do we pool resources and solve some of these shared problems?
That'll be an ongoing area of report for us in these meetings. So the Wishbone project, I moved that up here just because I wanted to talk about it now that we have it kind of live and we've done some tests with it. There was a couple of questions I had. So we did some testing and I actually put up a printer in there. What was that? I put up a Zortrax 3D printer in there. Now I haven't heard of anything. I don't know if you've had any kind of interest that you've seen in that. But then I later went in and I put in another submission for a second printer, and I haven't heard anything and I haven't seen it on the list. So my question was, number one, Ben, did you get an email notification that somebody filled out the form and made an offer?
I haven't, and to be totally honest, I've been pretty consumed with the Badger stuff. That seemed like, we had all this momentum going. So this week is.
I understand, but my only question is, do we have that set up? Do we have it set up to where it sends an email whenever somebody fills out that form? Because I could set that up easily if it's not.
I think I got one.
Yeah, I think what we want to do is make sure that the email is sent to sort of the admin team.
Sure.
So whether we want to, John in the notes has listed this whole collection of, I guess, email addresses and subdomains for Enable. Well, I think we might already have one for Wishbone. It could be under finance.
When because John and I were just in there, we found the DNS, and I don't remember seeing one for Wishbone, but we could easily add one now that we know where it is, and point it to your page.
Yeah, and I'll leave that up to John because he's sort of in the managing these subdomains and stuff. But heads or tails, I haven't marketed it at all, so it's still, it's not quite live yet. But I did go through a bunch of iterations with Evan and John. Initially, we gave a presentation a couple of months ago saying, here's this whole grand vision, and we're going to do badges, and then we're going to do chapters, and then we're going to end up at Wishbone later, and it's going to match the system. We decided that a lot of things in Enable work better to model it manually. So it'll look like it's all working, but it'll be, what the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes. So the Wizard of Wishbone is going to be me gluing things together for a bit. And yeah, we gave Jeremy a demo. Everything seems like it'll work well enough, and we'll probably figure out what isn't working soon enough. But it'll probably be, I could publish it today or maybe on Monday. And your two printers that you offered will be something I can share. It's worth mentioning that currently we've got it set up with PayPal. PayPal is limited in the countries that it supports. So for example, Ahmad in Syria would not be able to use PayPal.
So a suggestion there, Ben, would just be to include a field where somebody can put in a phone number for a Zelle payment. I think that's pretty widely used, or There's other, like that, there's other electronic payment methods that are tied to phone
Right.
numbers that you might.
or even Western Union. I mean, there's fees involved with this stuff, but I know, I mean, Western Union still works in Syria and some of these other places. So that's a good point. And I think we'll figure that out as we go.
Yeah, I mean, they can always message one another and figure out those details. We don't need to account for every possibility in the form necessarily.
How are the shipping costs going to be handled? Because it could be considerable for a printer.
It's up to the person who's doing the donation. That's something you select during when you're filling out the form that, no, I'm not covering that. Yes, I will cover that, or we can discuss it.
And the decision for the equipment donation is the person that's making the posting. So let's say there's some suggested variables to consider, the person that seems like they need it the most, the person that's closest, the person that fills out the form first, but it's up to the person posting. So Jeremy put a couple of printers up. He'll be able to decide what are his priorities for sort of designating his equipment to a new home.
Cool. Looking forward to it. So I think everyone's familiar with this. For those who maybe haven't been here or don't recall, just a reminder, this Wishbone project is really about chapters supporting chapters, or us supporting chapters. It's when somebody needs something and somebody else has something, and it's a way of connecting those dots and providing another path for getting support, whether it be funding or supplies or a printer or materials or whatever you need. It's getting that help. That's what that program is about.
And there are 2 free printers waiting to be claimed.
Free with the caveat that we need to figure out shipping. I need somebody to help me get them to whoever they're going to. But if we can figure that out, the printers are available.
Right. Yeah, and I do think the nice thing about this whole thing is it does sort of encourage more regional and local support. I mean, I would hope that, if there's a chapter in Ethiopia with an extra printer, they're not going to ship it to the United States.
Exactly. The more people we can get into this platform, the more effective it will be, because you can do that kind of local focus. Okay, nice. So yeah, I mean, I got to say, it's really exciting to see how these things are coming together. I love the improvements that are being made. I love the work Nasvi is doing on the hub, and I love the way he's doing it in a way that it's not going to, keep us tied eternally to the hub if we ever decide we want to do something else. This stuff is modular and portable, and I love that. So big thanks to him for all the hard work. And I love these new systems and how they're kind of tying in with one another. And I agree 100% with what Ben said earlier, that I think what we just did with badges and bringing them into the hub and making it so that you see them when you hover on somebody's name or profile, this just immediately adds so much more value to the badging system. It makes it so much more visible and meaningful, and I think it's going to get used a lot more as a result. So big improvement. So
the back end of it too, I think, is a big improvement. Most people won't see that, but allowing Bob to potentially manage a small team of people that can improve some badges, maybe, and not all badges. I mean, I think it will be hopefully much easier.
Just in the process itself. I mean, before we had to review the evidence, we had to, to issue the badge, we have to actually go and log into Badger and fill in the email address and the link to the evidence. There's a lot of copy and paste, and so it does.
Let's remember, you still have to review the evidence,
of course,
with the new system, and you still have to copy and paste into your browser, because you can't click on it when it comes in. There's a link. You have to copy it. You have to open a new tab in your browser, paste it in, look at the evidence, then go back to the hub. So there still is that element.
Pop out.
Yeah, I mean, we can make the link clickable easily enough, but you're always going to have to go somewhere to review evidence. Yeah. But what I'm talking about is we don't have all the steps in the process.
Correct. Oh, it's much easier and much improved.
One thing I was wondering about is how when you approve a badge, there's an admin comments field in there. Does that get emailed to the person requesting the badge? Like, do they get those comments?
I think so.
Yeah, they should.
Okay. All right. So that's like your comment to the person making the request.
Well, I discussed that with Nasvi, and I'm not sure. Please check on that. I'm not certain.
Right, let's follow up. Let's see if that's internal only or if that's to the user.
I think it may be internal only. because he added a message icon, which I click, and then I can send a message to the person, because half the time there is a back and forth. And the biggest single problem still is no permission given. So a link is there to
Right.
Dropbox or Google, and
Hmm.
I don't have.
By the way, that should be one of the, we can set up new templates in there now, Bob, and I know how to do that. I can help you with that. So we can set up a template for, please give me permissions to this or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
But yeah, so we'll follow up on that. Let's find out what that admin comment does, whether it
Right.
goes to the end user or not. But in any case, obviously, the system is a big improvement overall, and
Oh,
we'll
it
tweak
is.
it and we'll get
It
it
is.
perfected. But
Right. And John and I are working on a better system for keeping up with some of the little iterations that are going to be naturally happening. So I've got a document that I've been trying to pull emails into, and I'll update that today with a bar on the top that has the sort of pending issues and 2 priority tiers. And we've also got some admin wiki pages in the space on the hub. So I think we'll settle into a process that makes it easy to keep up with this stuff, and hopefully move away from emails, because these email threads can just extend exponentially and then get lost immediately. So
okay, on Lumio, this will be easiest just to share on screen. So our policy proposal has been approved. So this was the discussion about charging money for Enable stuff. And so the sort of the statement that we ended up all agreeing on is, Enable is a volunteer philanthropic effort. We give devices away for free. Open source licenses for Enable designs typically do not prevent people from charging for devices, but any such commercial activity is done outside of Enable. So that's the wording that we all kind of converged on, and we would, encourage our volunteers to use that and communicate that wording when, if you are, working with folks, just so that we all kind of make that clear in our engagements. So that's been approved.
Yes, congratulations to all. Do we have a place on the hub where resolutions aggregate?
No, we used to do that as part of the SPC space, and that would be the most appropriate place to do it. I just haven't been keeping that up. I've tried to kind of cajole Ben into helping me to maintain the SPC stuff and upload videos with me and all that, and maybe we could figure out a way of getting back to that. Back when we were on enable.org, yeah, I maintained a part of the SPC page that had all of the approved Lumio proposals and their current status and all that. I just couldn't keep up with it.
And for a while, I had a Kumu map that purported to do that. But of course, the upkeep on all of this is the big challenge we have.
It is.
In general, both with regard to administering our development, which has gone into warp speed with Masri's help, and with regard to all sorts of other things like Lumio resolutions, we need a way of bubbling, on the one hand, maintaining the historical stream, which, as we've seen, is hundreds or thousands of pages, but bubbling up the lasting resolutions and perhaps the current issues, so that you don't have to do archaeology to figure out what the current state of affairs is.
Maybe the next step for us with Lumio is to set up a custom page that has the resolutions and have that be on the hub. The problem with your previous system, Jeremy, and John's previous system is it manually involves updating this stuff that just doesn't work forever.
So are you saying a custom page on the hub that automatically kind of pulls data from Lumio so you don't have to update it, or are you just saying a page?
There might be just a page on Lumio that we can pull up that has completed projects. Lumio has some of those features in it already. I looked at your whole archive on the SPC hub space, the wiki, it's nice to see it like that, but boy, it would make such a difference to have it be
Yeah.
just automatically pulling it because it's already there. It's already
Be
in Lumio,
wonderful.
so-
Yeah. I mean, if
Well,
we
you know, as a matter of fact, so there is a page. Simple. There's a page on Lumio. The link is now in chat. It is now in chat, which summarizes all pools, all polls. And the top one is the proposed enable policy.
oh,
So
yeah.
that's a place to begin.
Yeah,
Right, and
that
we
could
now
easily
know
be embedded.
that Everton's taking off. Great to have you join us, Everton.
Yeah. Best wishes. Stay safe, Everton.
Keep us posted. For
Yeah, I mean, we could
Well,
just
that-
embed this page in the hub.
right, and it doesn't even have to be an iframe. John knows of now a much better way of having a page not as a. I see you have the aha face.
Well, okay, so we'll look into it.
Yeah, I mean, you
Anyway.
can just put the page as a custom page in the hub. They have a feature for that where you can just put in a URL and that'll be a page in the hub.
It does require you to join the group and log in to view anything.
In order to see the poll results. Okay, so if we embed this page, anybody not logged into Lumio is going to need to log in screen until they do. We'll have to test that out and see what the experience is like. Maybe that's okay.
Maybe
Actually,
we can also
that-
make that page public.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess
So-
that under settings.
So
Edit.
something to look into, but I think that the solution that we want and every opportunity that there is having it be automated. If the data exists somewhere, we shouldn't be copying and pasting it as much
Absolutely.
as possible.
Completely agree. Yep. All right, so we'll look into options for embedding Lumio summaries in the hub, I guess is what we're saying. I guess we need somebody to kind of take ownership of that.
I'm gonna tap John.
I'm kind of wondering, John, was that an offer that I heard there?
Apparently.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna put it down for you. Figure out how to embed Lumio summary. All right.
I'll help in the role of nagging.
Awesome.
Yeah, always appreciated.
All right, let's see. I didn't finish this morning getting to kind of reorganize our notes, so some of this I'm going to skip. We've talked about community systems. Andrew's not here, skip that. Volunteering needs is just a reminder to us that we want to kind of clearly list out our volunteering needs as we get them clarified. Onboarding, I think we're going to really have a lot more of a discussion on that in 2 weeks when Isabella gives her wrap up, so let's hold off on that discussion. There's 2 high-level discussion topics here in the notes. One of them is a topic related to sort of how effective is it for us to be doing this remote production and delivery of enabled devices, just going off of photos and then shipping a device off to somebody. And there's a whole discussion around that. And then the second high-level discussion, which is way further down in the notes, has to do with just sort of this imbalance between demand and production capacity, where right now we have a lot more volunteers looking for people to make devices for than we have people asking for devices that we know of. And so those are the 2 kind of big picture topics that we have on the board for discussion. And since I didn't get a chance to better organize the notes, I'd kind of just like to open it up for discussion on either of those.
Well, I think I just saw on the hub, on the forum, didn't one of our chapters just basically put out a plea saying, do you know of anybody who needs a device? We're ready to deliver. I forget which chapter it was.
Well,
It's a pretty-
it happens intermittently because it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah, but they felt they needed to reach out to everybody and
I mean, this goes back to our whole discussion about the community systems, which started from a discussion about Enable Web Central and what improvements we should make there. And then it turned into a discussion of, is this even the best possible tool? But the reason we were having those discussions in the first place goes back to this issue that we've got this platform. And we've got all these volunteers, thousands of, people in the platform with accounts, but they log in and they go to look at the map and they just don't see many pins there. And that's always been our problem. We've never been able to drive enough of the general public, the people with limb differences, into this platform to request devices. Is it because the platform wasn't right and it was too hard to use and they gave up on it? Is it because we didn't do enough publicity and getting the word out there? I don't know the answers to these things, but the direction we're headed now is developing a better, simplified, easier to use kind of a tool. And I think then, so once we get to that point, which feels now like we're maybe a couple months out from something that we can at least look at as an alternative, we are then going to have to turn our attention back to this question of, okay, how do we get the word out to the public? And how do we get all those people who are out there that we know need, some help, but how do we make them aware of that particular platform and get them in there and asking for devices? We are going to have to come back to that.
Let me just.
Dara, before we go too far into it, Dara did put in the chat, and I had sent messages also to folks. Are we going to be looking at Dara's proposal today?
We said we were going to.
I apologize. Yes, I'd love to. This is again me being completely disorganized now. I have too much going on, so I apologize again, Dara. I need a reminder here about.
That's fine. No
where we left
worries.
off.
So yeah, maybe Dara, if you want to show, I don't know if you want to share your screen real quick. There's a couple things that we had talked about last week. If you want to touch on those points, there was a
Sure.
I think a timeline was one of them.
Oh yes, that is. I do remember that now. Let me open up that.
Yes, now it's all coming back to me. I did forget that we had talked about voting on this. I apologize, Dara.
That's fine. That's all good. It's that's life. It happens. Share.
We also have these back-to-back meetings on Friday, which has been tricky.
Right. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
So the only difference that I made, differences that I did, where did I put it? There we go. So deliverables will consist of a report containing the following, as well as a number of periodic posts and updates on the platform of your choosing. And I think, within sort of 3 months from kickoff is maybe the right sort of number. That timescale can shrink depending on difficulties in actually extruding the material. But I completed phase 1A of the, testing scheme, and now I have possibly the world's most expensive back scratcher.
Nice.
So it's fantastic.
All right.
So yeah, I've made a start on what will become the test rig.
Nice.
I don't believe I made any other changes. Let me just go back to my emails with Jeremy. No, I believe that was the only change requested.
Yeah, so let's just go to the actual summary page with the numbers if we could.
The money.
There we go. Yep, thank you very much. And so I know we did this last time. I'm going to do it again this time. I think Ben referred to this as trying to fix the airplane while we're flying it, but this is our first time through this, so we got to figure this out. I think I brought up a question a while back. Now that we have approval as the SPC to review and approve funding requests within certain parameters, I think we do need to ask ourselves a question about what constitutes a quorum? How many people need to be here from the SPC for us to make a call like this? Is it 3 of us? Is it 4 of us? 5, 2? I don't know, but I think that's something that it's never mattered to us before, but probably something we should agree on now. How many do we need to take a vote?
Jeremy, maybe even a larger question is who is the SPC on any given day on the call? It could be 2 to 4 people, or it could be 10 people.
That's exactly right. And I hate to bring this up because we do not have people with these kinds of underhanded, tendencies or anything. But John brought this up with Lumio, the possibility of somebody storming the castle, getting all their friends involved to come and vote for their proposal and stuff. Well, we say anybody can join the SPC. What's to prevent somebody from making a proposal and then inviting 10 of their friends to come in on the voting day, you know?
I think we have to be honest that some people have extensive fan clubs.
Yeah, so we should probably agree, like Bob said, on, you know, maybe there's anybody's welcome to join our SPC meetings, but maybe there is a defined list of core SPC members, and we have to agree on how we establish that and handle membership. And I guess you're talking about voting rights at this point, really, you know?
Yeah. Well, you are. I mean,
There's a
So
lot of
if
hypotheticals, but you know, in truth, I think it's pretty clear that if we had 2 people in the meeting, that wouldn't be enough.
I tend to agree.
And
I feel
today
like
we have
3 or
5 people, and I think that is enough for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think
So
it's in the 3 to 5 range. That feels right to me for voting. I don't know what the actual right number is, though.
well, it should be an odd number. Otherwise you get a tie.
It's a fair
5
point.
seems safe. That's what we got today.
All right, so, you
Well,
know,
it
I'm
means you
fine
can't
with,
use the word triumvirate in the meeting.
That's,
You know, and
that's a good word.
it is a good word.
Uh,
so if we were to agree on, say, 5 people, because we don't always have 5 people that come, but, you know, like they do in, you know, in Congress, you know, you kind of promote the fact, hey, this is a voting day, show up, you know, and we'll get 5 people here. So I'm fine with that if everyone else is.
I mean, it could be 4 too, but 5 is greater than 4, so I think we're in the clear for today. Heads or tails?
And that's, I would say 4 people. I would say 4 people in addition to the proposer who doesn't get to vote.
Well, that leaves you in a scenario where you may need a tiebreaker then.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why I said it should be an odd number, right?
yes, indeed,
Right.
okay.
So I like 5. I mean, maybe we agree on 5 for now. We can always change it later, but if everyone's comfortable with that, we can agree
But
on that. That
Dara's
allows-
not going to be voting, so
Okay.
today we have 4 voting parties.
Well, Isabella has joined
Isabella
us.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, then we're good.
All right,
Isabella,
look, let's-
saving the day.
To be conservative.
You don't know what
let's
you're
say-
voting on, but you're the deciding factor.
To be to be conservative, let's say 5, not including the applicant.
Okay.
And let's agree that these allocations, they will of course be visible in Open Collective when the money passes through, but they should also be
Posted in the hub.
called
Yeah.
out in the hub and in our SPC aggregation or whatever that turns
Yeah.
out to be.
Definitely. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Dara,
Kevin,
do you, oop.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, Dara, if you want to give an elevator pitch for
That's what I was gonna-
Isabella.
Yeah,
In a
absolutely.
nutshell, this is the SPC voting for projects in action. The plane being put together as we fly that you're witnessing, Isabella. So Dara, pass you the mic.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. It pertains to the kinetic hand, which I'm sure you've seen. One of the recipients, one of the recipients in particular, because of their limb difference, has trouble closing the hand, actuating it. It's believed that it's because of the types of materials that we're using. In this particular instance, it's Recreus Filaflex, which is a little bit softer than what is suggested by the original creator. But even so, still not quite flexible enough. So there are a number of newer materials on the market, and I thought it might be a good idea to explore some of those in using the kinetic hand as context and to characterize their performance in relation to a baseline. So basically, it's come up with a way to test how flexible the particular hand is with whichever material, get some new shiny materials, make some new parts in said shiny materials, test and report. So report with a number of periodic updates. I suspect there'd be some periodic updates to the SPC as well.
So Dara, basically, this is a study of the different materials, what prints, what doesn't, and if it does print, here's the best way to print it.
And how it performs.
Right.
Yeah, and a qualitative, this is half as flexible or twice as flexible, 3 times as flexible as the baseline.
Yeah, it's semi-quant. I mean,
Yeah, indeed.
No.
So that's about it. There's also a little bit of bonus, which I've had some luck with Recreus actually. There are some conductive materials, and the Kinetic Hand uses, you can use printable inserts for the fingertips. And I thought it might be a nice idea. If you use conductive filament, you can use touchscreens with the hand, which I thought is a nice idea. So I thought I'd tack that on the end.
That's great. And Dara, remind for the summary, who the hell are you? What's your connection?
Yes, I am Dara Broadbent. I work with 3D Crowd. 3D Crowd are currently in the process of setting up an Enable chapter alongside a lot of our other work. Ed Grieg, I always forget.
Ed Grieg.
Is our sort of point of contact between Enable and 3D Crowd. He's basically transitioning the work he did with Deloitte into 3D Crowd.
Where are you physically located, Dara?
I'm located in a place called Sheffield in England, Steel City.
Sheffield?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you actually have a background in engineering and testing.
Absolutely, yes. I am, in theory, a computational fluid dynamicist, but I spend a lot of time working on submarines and testing the submarine propulsion system at model scale. And, well, a lot of our instrumentation work is similar to the type of test rig that I'm talking about here.
Okay.
So there's 2 things that I can think of just to play devil's advocate and to follow a process. One thing, heads or tails, it probably is a good idea to lump in the chapter status officially going through as part of, something that would be great to tie together. But, for our SPC folks, do we want to think about if Dara is almost a chapter, do we want to think about this as a potential wishbone project? So just something to think about. The other thing is just a quick add-on, separate topic. A lot of our devices are can be challenging to print. I've heard that the Kinetic Hand is more challenging than some. And it would be worthwhile potentially to think about what is going to make this easier for people, not more difficult. And I know that with some of the flexible filaments, it can be, some of the devices are much harder. The NIOP devices, for example, are really pretty high skill level requirements. So looking at whatever you're doing as, making this easier for people, what's the lowest hanging fruit to make one of these would be, I think, a high priority. So those 2 things I can think of.
Yeah, there are basically 2 devices that use flexible hinges. One is the Kuayu Hand, which is currently used in all the NIOP, and the other is the new Kinetic. And I think from what I've seen, the Kinetic Hand has already outstripped the Kuayu in terms of popularity.
If you don't mind, maybe flip back to the page with the pricing for the proposal while we
Sure.
have
I
a
just
fun-
thought I'd ask if anybody, if Isabella in particular has any questions. Okay.
yeah. So
I think anything that can be done to add some science and technology to help people print flexible materials is worthy.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I agree with that. I think that it's a very well put together proposal from a very highly qualified guy. The budget is not large. I think it went through this pathway because He's ready to get going. And I think we can agree that this is the kind of thing that would benefit the community at large. Therefore, I would support just doing it through SBC.
I agree completely.
And I want to point out that we're looking at a proposal for about $550. Current balance in the Enable Fund is just over $31,000. Just sort of puts things in perspective here.
Yep.
So
Right.
I,
any other
uh,
questions or comments before we vote?
Yeah, and I guess Wishbone is still sort of in a transition, and it sounds like Dara's still getting the chapter set up. But I guess I would, I'd love to have your final submission of this rig and your report as a chapter. I think would be great. So if that is something that you think it would be possible in 3 months, I think it would.
I'd like to think that's possible. One thing to mention, we are a CIC, community interest company. We are a registered organization. We have a CEO. It's not just 40 idiots flying in loose formation. So there is an amount of weight behind it, if that makes sense. It's not just a logo.
Yeah, I would be in favor, though, of not conflating this with a chapter status or anything. You're pursuing that. You and Ed, I mean, there is an established procedure for establishing yourself as a chapter. You and Ed Grieg are working on that. I would encourage you to pursue that. I wouldn't tie it into this $550 in any way, shape, or form. You can do the work whether you're a chapter or not. They're two separate issues in my mind. But
Okay, I think we should go ahead and take a vote on this then. So might as well start with you, Bob.
yes,
Okay, John,
Yes?
Ben?
Yep.
Isabella?
Yep.
And I vote yes as well, so that's unanimous. We're going to go ahead and fund this and get it going. John, I'll let you take it from here as far as the logistics.
Well, sure. So, Dara, you have a choice. You can simply submit an invoice for the whole amount to Open Collective, or if there's question about whether these are actually going to have to be priced, you can bundle them and submit them to Open Collective. But it's Open Collective / Enable Fund, or I believe, as of this week,
I just checked.
finance.enable.org, which will go
Yeah.
to the same place.
With the dash, finance.enable with the dash.org does work. That'll take you right there.
And we can trivially pay through PayPal, which has little or no fees. So that would be preferable if you can provide a PayPal account.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, interesting. I can't see. Yeah, that's why. The dash gets me every time.
Yeah, that's something we struggle with.
Blame John.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. What can I say?
Terrible
Oh,
idea.
yeah. Hey, that's fine. Wonderful. So, yeah, I will make an account and get started.
Excellent.
I've managed to flog some materials from Recreus, so I've got some materials to get on with to at least start.
Great.
We'll see how we get on.
So it is true that bundling, not.
Lost you, John.
yeah.
It always happens right when he starts talking.
Jeremy, just we were in discussion before we addressed Dara's project
Yeah.
about this whole thing of mismatch of recipients. I had one input I'd like to just kind of raise.
Absolutely. Before I switch us back
Yeah.
to that, though,
Mhm.
because I want to make sure that we have covered everything here.
Yep.
It looks like might have to wait for John to reconnect. But for now, I'll ask Dara, is there anything else that you need to take your next steps. Any other questions? Any other thing you want to discuss here?
There was one small question. I've made the assumption that using the hand at 100% scale, the all sliders to the middle default kinetic hand is the right way to go. Any
Well,
deviation?
it's a
from
really
that?
interesting question, because we talked about this last time, and the way scale is going to impact the results because of the amount of flexible material that's in the hinge then. I will say that, he took the opposite approach of most of our devices. So instead of scaling up from 100% like most of our designs, the kinetic hand you scale down from 100%. So if you just go with the default 100%, you're dealing with what would be a hand for a very, very large adult. That's like max size.
Right.
So if you wanted to test sort of a middle of the road average size, that would probably be somewhere in the 80% range, I'm thinking.
Or for a child, it could even be 65%.
65%. That's why I say middle of the road might be in the, 75, 80.
I would encourage two different sizes, Dara. I would do a 90 to 100% for an adult, and I would pick, Jeremy, I don't know, something for what,
65, 70%.
yeah, for a child. And it adds another variable, but I think, as we had discussed, that
I
could
think
be
you'll
an
get
important
different
factor.
results.
If you guys think that is the way to go, that's absolutely fine. Let me just make
Yeah,
a note.
I'd add another variable to the.
If if it's up to you, if it fits within your, sort of scope and,
I think
abilities.
it's not far out. I'll need maybe an
I'd
extra
be-
spool of material, but yeah,
And
I think
I'd
it's within the.
I'd be very comfortable with that. I think there's a little flexibility in here, but I also, it would be fine with the alternative. If you decide that it just, you want to start simple and do one, I would say it's also fine to just go right in the middle.
I think I'd start with the first with what I've got, and then I'll make a note. So 65%.
Yeah,
for a child, yes.
and 90 to 95% for an adult.
Well, I mean, he's
Yes.
going to start at 100%.
No.
That's okay. I mean, that's a large adult.
Yeah,
but-
it is a fairly large hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make a note of it. 90 to 95.
Just as a point, Jeremy, for you, I'm making a kinetic hand now for Mike Larson. We did the sizing. I had sent him the test bombs.
Yes.
And believe it or not, 100% is a little too big. 99% I'm making it based on his
Wow.
input.
Okay. Yeah,
So, but he has a large residual anatomy.
that makes it hard. Yeah. All right. So we don't have much time left, but I want to bring us back just briefly to the topic that I brought up before, and we'll just talk about the one of the two issues, which has to do with, having more volunteers than we have people asking for devices, and the idea that we're probably going to have to think about how do we get out there and get the word out and bring people into whatever platform we end up using for that. And Bob, I think you had a
Well, I have a thought based on an observation, and the observation is, interestingly, over the past several months, there have been a number of tickets coming into the help desk for prostheses for animals.
Yep.
And I generally latch them onto Lars because he did the work with the secretary bird. And I also tell them to post in the forum of the hub, join the hub, post in the forum, because there are people who have made prostheses for various animals. And it seems to me that with the popularity of pets all over the world and the large organizations like the American and British Kennel Clubs, things like this, if we had I'll call it a division of Enable for animals.
I love it.
And, you know,
Because I've seen, you see some of these animal prostheses, but I don't recall ever seeing like something that's been standardized where like a dog leg that can be scaled up or down, or
Exactly.
things like that. That's pretty interesting.
Exactly. And the thought here is, in this imbalance, one way is to get the word out. Another way is to increase the pool of recipients,
It's true.
ergo non-human. And I think there is a hidden pool of recipients here And people love their pets. As a dog owner now, I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my thought.
Ben,
I think it's a great point, but it also underscores a challenge that we have with the enable model. So currently we sort of have this finish line of giving a device. Done. We have chapters that say, I have all these devices I want to give away. Giving devices to pets follows that model perfectly because you get no feedback from a pet. You just say, here, you can make iterations, but you're not expecting them to be a developer or
I'm not
to
sure.
learn the printing
I'm not sure I
skills.
agree with that, Ben. I mean, pets have owners and their owners care deeply for them. And I think that you
Oh,
would
yeah,
get feedback
that's
from
true.
the owner. He seems to be limping. He's not walking well on this. It seems to be bothering him on this leg. I think,
Right.
but you raise a good point. I think in both cases, we need to figure out how to do a better job of extending our cycle into follow-up and feedback.
Right.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I think we need to do that with both. If we start doing it with animals, we need to do
Yeah.
it there, and we need to do it with our
I mean,
Our
it
human-
will take
Good
a
points, Jeremy.
champion within Enable to, I mean, we have to look at what designs currently exist. Are there pools of people who have experience in this? I think so, that have a mission that they would love to contribute towards. And it would have to be, you know, rolled out and tested and everything else. But I'm just thinking that more people are asking us about this. Not a lot, I mean, not hundreds, but 2, 3, 4.
And the same applies when you talk about expanding the pool. Not only does that expand the pool of potential recipients, it expands the pool of potential volunteers. There are a lot of people out there that would willingly volunteer their time to help animals that might not do so to help people, just different people, different strokes, you know?
And it would probably result in a novel set of stories for local news, which would
Right.
push things
Well-
along. So it's a great idea.
Anyway, can you see the American Kennel Club, some associating with them, for instance, or something? I mean,
Well, you know, that was the point I was going to make, is that we're going to need a champion, but outreach to dog groups and cat groups and veterinarians, et cetera, would likely end up being a part of this.
Well, but that's an interesting angle on this, that think about our efforts to do that on the human side. We're reaching out to hospitals and medical organizations. They're a lot harder to get in with.
Well, that's right.
They're gonna have some expectations. You reach out to somebody that has some, you know, injured animals or what have you, they're going to welcome assistance, you know, I think.
Right.
So,
With regard to the larger issue, you know, I like to think that what we ought to fund, if we're going to fund anything, is things that volunteers can't do, won't do, or shouldn't do, just as naive volunteers. Outreach, both to medical and perhaps to veterinary, but certainly outreach to amputee organizations and so on, is something we volunteers clearly haven't done after all these years. And if the right person came along,
that's a really good
I
point.
think that might be a staff position analogous to what Ben does.
Well, yeah, I
Benefit
mean,
everyone.
we wouldn't call it a staff position because we want to make clear that we don't
I
have
beg your pardon.
employees, but it would be another, I think that would be another paid project that we could hire for. And I agree completely that this
another
is-
huge recipient pool would be if we could make leg and foot prostheses. But
That's
we
true.
can't.
I like feet, legs make me nervous, but that's something we could explore. But I think the idea of having somebody, I mean, I look at this as a core challenge that this community has faced for years. This is not something new. This is something we've struggled with for a long time. We've tried to deal with it in a number of ways and we haven't been successful. To me, that's a good case for, like John was saying, you know, well, maybe there's somebody that has the skill set that would do it on a paid basis. Ben?
It's worth also recognizing who's the we that we're talking about. So the SPC just might be the wrong organ for that. We do have chapters that have figured it out. We talked with Adam Armfield yesterday. He's got this whole, I think, really innovative system of having this sort of outreach program that, you know, local doctors in the field need to have a certain amount of recipient volunteers that they collect. And then there's this partnership that builds. I think their number was 12. It sounds like it's been taking off. As a chapter, this has been done successfully. So I think
But we need to
Um,
start kind of asking ourselves, what kind of an organization are we? Because that's something that's been happening lately. Over the last 2 years, I've seen this, that we have moved more and more from
we're not an organization, though.
that's my point. That's my point, Ben, that we
Yeah.
have always been a community of volunteers, a global community of volunteers. And over the last 2 years, I have felt us shifting more and more to a chapter focus. And it's feeling more and more like if you want to be part of Enable, you got to be in a chapter.
Well,
I personally don't like that. I think we should be supporting volunteers. And that's
Without-
why we're having this discussion, because sure, chapters have it figured out. Sure, chapters can have ways of getting cases for themselves. But the reason we're here is to solve these issues for the global volunteer community, those individuals that just want to help somebody.
Well, the we part, it gets murky. So we in the SPC, we're not an organization and we can't do certain things, but chapters often are organizations and can do certain things that we can't do, but we, the larger Enable movement, can. So I think it is worth recognizing that to do some of these partnerships with traditional institutions like healthcare systems, there's a much better chance of having a traditional organization like a chapter, in Adam Arfield's case, making those partnerships, developing those relationships, and following up with that kind of project. Individual volunteers won't be able to do that. SPC won't be able to do that.
Well, we're just talking about the tool, the vehicle. That's fine. What I'm saying is, who other than us is going to be the one to make that happen? We've been dealing with this for years. The SPC is the one that should actually take the lead and say, if we think a chapter is the right tool to get it done, then let's find the chapter. Let's make sure they have the funding and support they need to do it. Let's make sure they're willing to take on the responsibility. But we're the ones that have to make that happen. Who else is going to?
The chapters are already doing it, though.
without
Without
any,
us.
without any
Ben,
data,
we are the help desk for the Enable community. Every individual volunteer that is not associated with a chapter is emailing us saying, how can I find recipients? We have to have an answer for them. The
I don't
chapters
have-
being able to get recipients for themselves doesn't help us to answer that question that's coming in every day to us.
I don't have any data, but I am certain we have a larger number of individual volunteers than we do people in chapters by a factor of 2 or 3 or 4. I would guess.
Right. And I guess this comes back to the community systems discussions that we've been having, that some groups, the SPC or / Enable Up Central is one collection, but we also have these other sort of regional collections like Enable France that have figured out ways of matching volunteers in a different way. And I guess we haven't really done that much. So that would be something to explore. Enable Brazil is another group that's been doing stuff similar to that. I think we can learn from them about how to follow that model.
Here. We're not talking about how to match volunteers. We're talking about how to find the recipients. That's a different discussion. It's a different effort.
Listen, I have just drafted an email to Jeff Powell, an early chapter leader in, I think at Duke University or one of the Research Triangle universities. It points out that he is, I think, one of our most accomplished experts at helping wannabe university chapters deal with risk management issues, a recurring topic, providing support for families of amputees, getting feedback and outreach to potential recipients. And I'm going to send this message to him, and let's pick his brain and see what might come from that.
Sounds good.
Great.
All right. So obviously it's an ongoing discussion to be continued, but we've run a little long, so we better go ahead and wrap up for today. Does anybody have anything that we need to talk about before we do so? Okay. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great week.
Everybody.